and welcome to Tax Matters. I am Pearl Naimeka. The other week, a 3-day technical workshop on value-added tax was organized by the African Tax Administration Forum in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital city. What is VAT? Value-added tax is a consumption tax that was first introduced into the world in the year 1954. In Nigeria, VAT was introduced in 1993 by virtue of the Value Added Tax Act of that year, and collection commenced in January 1994. Value Added Tax is administered in Nigeria by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It is charged on goods and services produced in Nigeria, as well as goods imported into Nigeria. The rate of VAT in Nigeria was 5% at inception and has remained so 25 years after. At the technical workshop on VAT organized by ATAF, one major challenge, among the several others brought up for discussion, was the issue of charging VAT on online transactions. The story of that workshop is the major item on the menu on today's episode of Tax Matters. But before we proceed, what is the rate of VAT in other parts of Africa? And what is the percentage contribution of VAT to the total revenue basket of these countries? What is the rate of VAT in Botswana?
Currently, we have two rates. Zero is a zero, but it's also a rate. We have 0%, we also have 12%.
In the entire tax basket of Botswana, what does VAT contribute?
Our VAT collects about 17% of the total revenue collected by BURS. Yeah, but we are right now is the 17% is quite low according to us. We are in the process of improving our collection by we've bought a new tax system. We are thinking of automation so that our collection can improve, so that the 17% can go up to at least 30%, because Botswana depends. I don't know whether you know that Botswana depends on diamonds. We want tax to be second.
What is the current VAT rate in Tanzania?
The current rate VAT in Tanzania is 18%. VAT actually contributes more than 20% in the total revenue. Yeah.
What is the rate of VAT in Kenya currently?
We have 3 rates. We have a rate of 0, but it's still a rate of tax. Then we have a rate of 8% on petroleum products. And then we have the general rate, which is 16% on other goods that are subject to VAT, goods and services, I mean.
So in your total tax collection in Kenya, how much of that is VAT?
That's a very interesting question, because KRA is made up of 2 revenue departments. That is basically customs and border control department, which accounts for about 30% of the revenue collected by the entire Kenya Revenue Authority. Then we have the mother department, which we call Domestic Taxes Department, which contributes the balance of the revenue. Then within Kenya Revenue Authority, we have 3 segments. We have the large taxpayer segment, which contributes about 60% of the revenue contributed by domestic taxes. Then we have medium taxpayer segment and small taxpayer segment. So within domestic taxes department, which is the main revenue department, I can say that VAT contributes about 30% of the total revenue that is generated by the department.
What is the current rate of VAT in South Africa?
At the moment it's 15%. It was 14%, but we've just increased it about 6 months ago. No, actually more than that now, about a year ago, to 15%.
So out of the entire tax basket of South Africa, how much is VAT contributing to that?
The figure varies, but I think it's about 27%. It's one of our top 3 taxes, with personal income tax and company income tax.
What is the rate of VAT in Mauritius currently?
Now, the current rate of VAT in Mauritius is 15%.
In the entire tax basket of Mauritius, what does VAT contribute?
Above 40%. 40%, yeah.
Again, the rate of value-added tax in Nigeria is 5% of the cost of goods and services. None of those respondents spoke about any rate below 10%. However, when it comes to the percentage contribution of VAT to total tax revenue, Nigeria is not doing badly. In 2018, when total federally collected taxes stood at 5.32 trillion naira, VAT collection amounted to 1.1 trillion naira, a little above 20%. So much more could be achieved with a little tinkering with the rate of VAT in Nigeria. Of course, the pundits, the experts have suggested that if Nigeria increases the rate of VAT and improves on the collection and accounting mechanisms and combines these with a lowering of the rate of companies' income tax, which is currently at 30%, so much could be achieved. Mr. Logan Worth, Executive Secretary of ATAF, had something to say on this at the opening of the workshop.
The average VAT rate in Africa is 18%. So yours is very low. In bigger economies like yourselves, compared to, one would compare Nigeria economy, because Nigeria is the biggest economy on the continent, to economies of South Africa, Morocco, Egypt. And there, in those countries, the VAT averages 14 and 15%. So for a big economy, just to help your argument, even 7.5% will be low.
It is against the background of all these that we bring you the story of the technical workshop, which of course was held basically with a view to charting the way forward in VAT administration in Africa. In his opening remarks to flag off the workshop, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, Executive Chairman FIRS, noted that while placing focus on VAT as a high revenue yielding tax, it is equally important to effectively administer the tax, especially in ways that are equitable to the taxpayer.
VAT as a key indirect tax has also emerged as the highest source of tax revenue for almost all governments. Indeed, the UAE recently, I believe a year ago, even introduced VAT at 5%. Nigeria also is one of the countries on the African continent that has VAT, but at one of the lowest rates at 5%. But if we look at the research by the African Tax Outlook 2017, it placed VAT as the highest tax revenue earner, followed by PIT and CIT taking the third position. This is mainly due to the nature of this tax, which is paid by us when buying goods or services. The African continent has been seen to be a very high-level consumption market. When we look at our production, there was some research that indicated that 85% of all the goods and services consumed come from outside the African continent, while trade between our respective countries accounts for the other 15%.
Mr. Fowler shared some Nigerian-specific experiences with the delegates.
I will give you some information to show you in terms of our VAT compliance and also our VAT collection. To give you some indication, in 2010, the total VAT collected was 564 billion. In 2018, which was last year, it crossed 1.1 trillion naira, almost double within that period of time. However, the significant growth came between the years 2016 and 2018, up from an average of 800 billion to 1.1 trillion. This is at a rate of 5%. Now, when you look at the analysis of our VAT, before 2017, VAT accounted for about 17% of total tax revenue. By 2018, it accounted for 21% within a period of 3 years. Now, if, for example, we were to just increase our VAT by 50% from 5 to 7.5, that would mean that VAT will account for over 30% of total tax revenue. And that gives an indication of the potential of VAT. I'm quite aware that some neighboring African countries, Ghana, etc., do have VAT rates in multiples of what we charge. And also, some other African countries, I believe, have VAT rates that are a bit too high. So I think as we discuss these issues, to see how best we can grow this tax type, I think we shouldn't be afraid to go home and tell the policymakers either your VAT rate is too low or your VAT rate is too high. On the Nigerian perspective, if you ask the average consumer or ask other interested parties, they'll tell you that 5% is okay. From the standpoint of a tax administrator, we believe that we should at least increase our VAT from 5 to 7.5%. And I think that has given a lot of debate.
Still on Nigeria.
In May 2018, we wrote to all companies, partnerships, and enterprises that had banking turnover of 1 billion and above annually to try and see how they have been compliant when it comes to VAT. Surprisingly, based on the results that we did have, we actually took this exercise down to companies that had turnover of 100 million naira annually to review their VAT performance. Out of now close to 40,000 accounts, 3,000 of those accounts have paid over 82 billion within 60 days. Not to say the majority of these taxes actually had to do with VAT not remitted.
On the taxation of international trade, especially digital commerce,
increasingly, consumers are looking for products, services, and goods online. This forms part of the fourth industrial revolution, where our civilization is moving towards digital platforms as a means of facilitating the day-to-day running of businesses and households. It is imperative to understand how this will affect VAT as a tax and how best to mitigate any challenges. You might wonder, what have we decided to do in Nigeria? We're still talking about it. But as in any country, politics is key. So we have thrown it out there and told Nigerians that effective 2020 in January, we will be asking the banks to charge VAT on online transactions, both domestic and international. This is still subject to approval, which will be given at higher levels, but we've already started engaging taxpayers within Nigeria to let them understand that we have to close the gap and the leakages.
in his own remarks, Mr. Logan Worth, Executive Secretary ATAF, set the tone for the workshop.
People ordering, and then it shows it being delivered here. There's no office, there's no vehicle that brings you the leather strap you bought for your watch. And so you can't charge them anything. And yet they are making money here in your country. We realize that the old way of going to the shop to buy a product may not be the most effective way when the same product is available online. At times even cheaper. E-commerce changes the distribution of taxable activities. It poses challenges to the jurisdiction to income tax and alters the balance of the taxing authority, resulting in the erosion of our tax base. E-commerce creates difficulties in the identification and location of taxpayers, the identification and verification of taxable transactions, and the ability to link between taxpayers and the taxable transactions, thereby creating opportunities for tax avoidance. How do we begin to analyze as an African continent the fact that increasingly our economic activity is taking place and we are transacting in our countries with entities not located physically here, and therefore our ability to collect revenue from those entities are difficult.
VAT, Value Added Tax, is a tax paid on all goods and services and remitted by the seller of the goods or provider of the service to government. 5% VAT is added to the total cost of goods and services in Nigeria, and when remitted to government is used for funding development. The VAT you pay will be used by government to develop our transport infrastructure like roads and railway lines, to continually improve our educational sector by building more schools and upgrading existing ones, to provide adequate security and a better quality of life for us all. Pay your VAT. Make your contributions to the development of Nigeria. It pays to pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
On the sidelines of the opening ceremony, Mr. Fowler spoke to the press on why VAT was the focal point of the workshop.
Well, for one, VAT is the fastest growing tax type. It's very easy to collect. It basically is a consumption tax, so that those who do not consume do not pay. It's a tax that does not negatively affect the needy or the poor. And it also provides sufficient revenue for economic and social development.
On the proposal for the increase of VAT rate in Nigeria?
Well, certainly. I think Nigerians like good things just like anybody else. But there's a saying, good things cost money. We want government to provide good roads, good hospitals, good schools. It costs money. And let's remember that 85% of VAT collected goes to the state governments. And that is where you and I reside. So let us financially put our state governments in a position where we can hold them to their mandates, where they can provide the much required infrastructure and social services to all people. And at the same time, we have to realize, just like the Executive Secretary said, supposing the oil price drops from 60 or 50 down to 30, that will certainly mean that we will not be in a position at the state level or even the local government level to even fund recurrent expenditure. We shouldn't take that risk. We should realize that if our neighboring countries, be it Ghana, be it Ivory Coast, the majority of the countries, the average rate that they charge on VAT, the minimum average, when I say minimum average, because some are in excess of 20, is 14 or 15%. We're still at 5. We have to be able to take that decision and move to at least 7.5. So I'm throwing this out there to get people ready, so we'll not catch them unawares. People who decide to buy certain items. For example, if I decide to go to a restaurant where I'll pay VAT to have a meal, the only option is that instead of going to a restaurant, I might go to the market and cook at home. But what I'm trying to explain here is that that 2.5% would not change anybody's mind. So those are the little things we've got to think about. But that 2.5% can save a life with that additional revenue.
On his expectations from participants at the workshop.
Well, apart from what the presenters are going to tell them and teach them about VAT administration, they're going to exchange ideas, what happens in their respective countries, take those ideas back home, and of course build on those and hopefully make their tax administration, especially in the area of VAT, more efficient and more effective.
Now what do be this? Make it sound like where you? The thing where you side me too much, calculation is where okay. Madam, me correct now. Now the price be that. You are playing with fire, so me I know say they never search fast for begin things. Oh, you want to play me while you? You want to teach me a bit?
Madam, now everything with the add VAT on top. Now so with the seller.
Mbo.
Madam, you did correct.
Saba.
Good day, madam.
Any problem?
Problem there.
The thing be say una not supposed to charge VAT for baby items and other things wey dey for VAT exemption list. See am? Chai! This one na wayo receipt o. Correct receipt suppose contain the things wey you buy and the VAT wey dey on top. Then other items wey no get VAT, you go put them separately. Madam, I apologize, You go change am.
Change am. You see say we know wetin government around.
To pay VAT dey compulsory. Na government dey use to make our life jolly, to collect and pay sharply to government. E dey correct.
FIRS, it pays to pay your tax.
Welcome back. We're sharing with you the story of the technical workshop on VAT organized by the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF, in Abuja from Monday the 26th to Wednesday the 28th of August 2019. No fewer than 30 delegates from member countries were in attendance. In the course of the 3-day workshop, presentations were made on various issues including charging value-added tax on the construction sector and the digital economy. Tax Matters spoke to some of the delegates on their expectations from the workshop.
I'm going to take a lot. I think looking at the program, like right now, Botswana, we are in the process of reviewing all of our laws, including VAT Act. And in our VAT Act, we've inserted the e-commerce legislation, which is why we are here. And because we haven't implemented that e-commerce legislation, we are hoping to get from those who've been doing e-commerce VAT to see whether our law we should improve or it will work for us as it is, the new one. We are hoping by the end of this year we'll be fully e-commerce and fully automated if things go well.
What do you hope to take away from this?
I think the main thing that we're here to discuss is e-commerce or e-services, where you buy things online, and we're trying to establish some form of consistency between the African countries on how we're going to tax that. So I think if we can achieve that, that'd be great.
What do you hope to take away from this?
Yeah, actually after this workshop, I'm expecting to enhance my knowledge, especially in capacity building, whereby because we are sharing different experience from different tax administrations from different countries in Africa. So back home, I'll share the knowledge and skills acquired.
For me, really, it's both learning and sharing experience in that even though we have automated our processes to a great extent within Africa, we still have room to learn from other tax administrations. And we are also taking this opportunity as delegates from Kenya to share our Kenyan experience so that then we can grow together. So it will be both a learning experience and a sharing experience.
What do you hope to take away from this forum?
Now, being a member of the VAT Technical Committee, we have to contribute. We have prepared a guideline on VAT concerning the construction industry, and we are working on another guideline on e-commerce.
VAT on the construction industry, VAT on e-commerce. It is hoped that arising from this workshop and similar outings, African countries will begin to develop homegrown strategies towards ensuring collection of adequate taxes in our collective bid to garner the much-needed revenue for economic development of the region. Join us next week on this same station for a fresh episode of the program. And remember, for information and education on taxation, this is the place to be. Bye for now.